Who better to give advice to struggling couples at a pivotal point in their relationship than two Scorpios on reality television? LOL. Nick and Vanessa are the hosts of Netflix's hit show, The Ultimatum, and season 3 just debuted today, December 4th, this afternoon. Now, I started off and I have only seen the very first episode, but I wanted to hop on here, do a quick debrief of episode 1, and then come back after I watch episode 2 with all of my thoughts along the way. So please don't put any spoilers for the rest of the episodes. We are just talking about episode 1, but I will be coming back to discuss the rest of the episodes. So, this season has an interesting cast. I would say a lot of these couples are very likely not going to make it. But least likely to make it is this top couple right here, Dave and Vanessa. Least likely to make it. So we meet all of the couples, and starting with JR and Zaina, both of them are in their 30s, and Zaina is the one who issued the ultimatum. They've been together for 3 years, which seems like a constant in a lot of these relationships. Most of them have been together for around 3 years. Now, on to Nick and Sandy. Nick is in his 30s and ready to settle down, while Sandy is 24 years old. We learn that they have a 10-year age difference, and Nick has lived in LA for 15 years, and he's ready to retreat, have a house on the lake somewhere, and start having children. Meanwhile, Sandy is not at that same stage of her life. She is not ready to leave LA, and she would like to stay there. They describe themselves as she's still Coachella-ing, he's still stage coaching, which Vanessa thought was absolutely hilarious. Let me say, Vanessa and Nick do a way better job hosting. And shout out to Nicole Weaver from the Black Bi Reality Podcast. She commented this on my TikTok. Nick and Vanessa do a much better job hosting when they are themselves and least produced, which just so happens to be when they host on The Ultimatum. Some things they say are actually funny. So, like I said, they have a 10-year age gap. Nick is ready to retreat and settle down. Meanwhile, Sandy is not. Then we met Mariah and Caleb. They are the couple who I am unfortunately covering during this. Mariah feels great about her career and made things clear to Caleb when they first started dating that she wanted to settle down and wanted kids. So I feel like she said that because she feels a little disappointed that she led with her intentions with Caleb and he can't meet her there. Caleb, on the other hand, feels like Mariah's younger than him and they should just enjoy their life. I'm not sure exactly what the age difference is. I'm sure that they said it. If you know the age difference, please put it in the comments. But Mariah says that at the end of this, she's willing to walk away if he's not ready to propose and meet her where she's at. Now, it's interesting that she has to specify this because you would assume that that would be what most couples are at the point in their relationships. The show is literally called Marry or Move On. That's what an ultimatum is. Nonetheless, she explains, I'll be leaving. Okay, I'll be leaving. On to Dave and Vanessa. They're the couple who I said are least likely to stay together. Dave and Vanessa have been together for 3 years, and Vanessa issued the ultimatum to Dave. Now, this is interesting because by the end of episode 1, you would think that Dave was the one issuing the ultimatum, but no, it's just his insecurity and frail ego. And also the realization that he's not as hot in the dating pool as he thought he was. I'm seeing a comment, so excited for your coverage of this season. Thank you. I'm so excited to cover this season. So Dave and Vanessa feels like marriage has been a taboo topic for them in their conversations. That's red flag number 1, okay? Because if you're feeling like you can't even approach your intentions with the relationship to your partner, that's a problem. You're feeling for some reason like, is she being silent or silenced, Dave? Okay. And Dave expressed in his confessional, this is when we first met Dave, our first impression, is he's talking about Mariah, her right there, and how he would like to get to know her. So meanwhile, Dave's in no rush to get married, but the girl that he's interested in and made eyes at, he heard issue an ultimatum. So Dave seems to go after Dave strikes me as the type of guy who would date a younger woman. Dave also strikes me as the type of person who would date somebody whose intentions he knows to be clear and then not give them what they're asking for. He also seems like Vanessa might be onto something when she suspects that there may be something he's seeing in the relationship that's not making him ready to dive in. And I would hold on to that thought based on how readily he was talking about pursuing Mariah. Next up is Aria and Scotty, this couple right here. Aria and Scotty have been together for 3 years as well, and Scotty's the one who issued the ultimatum. Aria does want to get married, but she's not ready right now. They live in 2 separate cities. She's at the peak of her career, and she's not ready to relocate and sacrifice. Now, I think it's very important to say that this is a very valid reason to not want to dive into marriage. If she's at the peak of her career and she's being asked to make the sacrifices and to make the compromise, that's not a compromise. Like, I think her and Scotty had a conversation where the two of them potentially have issues compromising. And that's because Aria just simply moving to your city and relocating for you wouldn't really be a compromise. That would be her doing what Scotty wants her to do. So that's the predicament they're in. Now, as I said, Vanessa and Nick do their best on the ultimatum. They're chaotic. They're themselves. It feels like they're a little bit less produced. It's no surprise to learn that they fought with each other on their way to the ultimatum. That's exactly what seems like goes on with them. What is surprising is that they're both Scorpios. And not only that, they're both born on the same day. Chaos, chaos. Now, let's get into the couple's last night together. This is their last night together, living as a couple. I think before they are separate, I don't know. It felt like their last night. Dave is telling Vanessa, him and her are having a conversation. He's saying that everybody there tonight felt like anyone who was issued the ultimatum, like they were being punished or like they were in trouble. And Vanessa's like, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I'm done if you don't want to commit to me. And Dave's response is that he's surprised Vanessa wants to give him that big of a pressure because there's a very high likely that he's going to connect with someone this week. And then he goes on to say exactly who he's mentioning because he has interest in Mariah. We'll get back to that. We'll get back to that sentiment of Dave's. Next up, we see Micah and Chanel, which I really feel like we spent barely any time on, which is why I may have forgotten to do them in the initial beginning, because there are some couples that I feel like we just kind of sped through. But it's Chanel is the one who gave Micah the ultimatum, and he's questioning her about how she can talk about how she's ready for marriage, but what she will do for him as his wife. And Chanel gets emotional over this because she feels like she's showed him what she's done that would make her the qualities of a wife, which is a great point, because if you're calling her wife, if you're calling her wifey, what do you mean that you're wondering about what she's going to do? Now, I do think that the way that they were approaching the experience is better than how Vanessa and Dave were at things, but I'm just not so sure about the direction of things there. He brought up that he's been there for her when she was driving Uber Eats, and that's completely fair, and maybe I'm misreading it, but personally for myself, I don't like when people point out times that I've been struggling, and especially not on camera. I feel like that conversation could have been potentially hurtful. Next up, Sandy and Nick they go into the experience with pretty good intentions. They're more curious about who each other is going to connect with and what's going to happen, because I think they both decided that depending on what happens, they'll decide whether they should stay together or break up. This is surprising, though, because Sandy, as we learn, she describes Nick as being one of her passions. So it's kind of surprising to me that they're both doing this experience. But like I said, they have a pretty good attitude about it. It seems like an issue for them is Sandy's passion. And Nick specifically says when Sandy's fire or passion is directed at him, it's an issue. However, we later learn in her conversation with JR that her issue with Nick is that he's really not checking in with her. His head is in the clouds, which is something that makes sense because he's an artist, but he doesn't check in with her on how her day is going. Aria is so me because as she's spending her last night with Scotty, she tells him that she expected him to be more sad, which is something that I would say 100%, especially if I was the one issued the ultimatum. I'd be like, why aren't you crying? Why aren't you crying right now? Mariah, on the other hand, is devastated. She's devastated about her and Caleb being apart. And JR and Zaina, again, this seems like another couple who's kind of more curious about what each other's experience is going to be. But JR expresses that he is kind of worried to watch Zaina be bubbly with someone else. And she's surprised at this because he's typically not jealous. So we'll see. I will say, as we get to the speed dating, JR and Zaina both have connections. As we get into the cocktail and speed dating, they both have connections. So I think that the couples who, it's interesting. I feel like sometimes the couples where someone issued the ultimatum, they end up finding out that they're the most open. Like, I feel like Zaina is pretty receptive of Scotty. And then I also feel like, who's the other couple? I feel like Vanessa is really receptive of Nick. On to speed dating. Chanel and David get along, which is kind of odd just because David knows, again, that Chanel is the person who issued the ultimatum, the same way he was interested in Mariah. He was interested in Chanel. So it's kind of like, again, you're pursuing someone who wants things that you're not intentioned for right now. I also think David, I'm so sorry. You're probably going to loathe me by the end of the season because I'm going to be talking about him quite a bit. But he tells Aria his favorite thing to do is to be vulnerable. Your favorite thing to do? Favorite thing ever? Okay. He's a chameleon. He strikes me as a chameleon and someone who will say whatever to you and kind of mirrors whoever is in front of them. And I don't like people like that. I don't like that. Sandy and JR have a conversation and they're sitting by the pool together. And both of them, you can tell, are very attracted to each other. It also seems like they're pretty compatible because she does want children, but she doesn't want them now. And JR was the one who was issued the ultimatum as well. So it's two people who were both kind of procrastinating the marriage phase. Now, Aria and JR talked, and I was kind of hoping that the two of them would connect because they had a lot in common. He talks about how he was married young at 22 and his dad is a pastor. Actually, he has a lot in common with me because my dad's a pastor. But then he's one of 7 children and Aria is one of 8. So they both know what it's like to be from big families, which is an experience of itself. My dad comes from a very large family. It's an experience to be from a large family. And when you are dating someone, you kind of do have to like prepare them for how large your family is as someone with a large family to be like, are you ready for this? Family gatherings are a lot. At the cocktail party, they play this quarters game, and I'm convinced that the coin that they got was 100% set on heads the entire time because nobody rolls anything except for having to answer a question. Now, in this, we find out a couple of things. We find out barely any. We find out JR said he wouldn't want his ex, which is Sandy. No, JR's ex is Zaina. He wouldn't want his ex to date Nick. No explanation. Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, like Sandy said. I think that it's probably a compliment to the fact that he feels like he would be her type and ready to settle down. Sandy answers in this round that if she had to go on a second date with someone, she would go with JR. So I think that Nick is very aware early on that Sandy and JR are attracted to each other. Now, after this game, Nick and Vanessa sit down, LOL. Not them. I said this. They're literally competing to be the second Nick and Vanessa on the show. It's killing me. Nick and Vanessa sit down and have a great conversation. They have tons in common. They're both homeschooled. They're both looking for the same things. And as they're having this beautiful conversation, Up walks Chet Hanks lookalike, overstepping what is it called? The rope that blocks people out of the VIP section, making himself at home, coming into VIP. You're not invited there, so that he can have a conversation and just interrupt Vanessa and Nick's conversation. And prior to this, he's in the corner. Oh my God, like the back of my head is starting to hurt. He's not even talking to anybody. He's not trying to make connections. He's fully fixated on Vanessa and watching Vanessa. And this is because I think Dave is having the realization that you're not the hot commodity here. No, you're not the HBCU. Everybody doesn't want you. It's not hot off the press for you. I'm so sorry. I think it was probably really funny for him to like Aria so much in the speed dating and then in this quarters game to learn that she felt like he and her had the least in common. So he's suddenly getting a grasp on, he thought, because remember, his conversation with Vanessa was, I cannot believe you're giving me this opportunity. I'm likely going to connect with somebody. And then all of a sudden you're faced with, nobody wants you. You're not desirable, Dave. Okay. And so he interrupts Vanessa's great conversation. I also think, if I'm being real, I don't think that Dave expected Vanessa to be a hot commodity. I don't think that he valued Vanessa as much as he should. I don't think that he accurately sized up what this experience was going to be and that she could be taken from him. I think that he thought that if anything, him, who's not ready to get married, would have more opportunities, and like she is going to have to cave to him. So he interrupts their conversation and he suddenly has a change of heart and he's telling Vanessa, I actually don't think I'm going to need these 3 weeks. Why need 3 weeks? Why 3 weeks? I already know now. I don't need to date other people. Where's the energy from earlier? No. So she tells him, I don't think it's actually going to benefit us to end this experience early. And he does what I expected him to do. And he acted like that was his idea as well. No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying we should end the experience early. I was more or less saying, I know where I'm at now. You were trying to convince her to leave with you. And she said no. So Vanessa says, Nick may have got what he wanted out of this experience in the first week, but I haven't. And she also lets us in on a little secret. I don't know if she was drunk or if she's accurate, but there's 7 more weeks. Get used to it, Nick, or get used to it, Dave. Clock in, okay, Dave, because you got 7 more weeks of this. Now, in this corner, we had Dave and Vanessa talking because he interrupted her talking to Nick. In the other corner, we have Sandy and JR. And they obviously, again, they have chemistry. We saw that earlier at the pool. They're talking. She wants someone, like I said, who's going to check in on her. She doesn't feel like Nick does. And they're both kind of saying the same things. He says that jealousy is an issue in his relationship, that he's very popular online. And Sandy kind of makes it seem like that's something she would be okay with. I do wonder if she would actually be okay with that. Sometimes we pretend that we would, but put yourself in that situation, Sandy, and you might not love that. But here they obviously have connection, and they get on the topic of like lots of innuendos, like they're totally going to pick each other. That's happening. Now, Scotty and Zaina walk past holding hands right in front of Aria, who is talking to, I keep wanting to call him Brendan, but I know it's not. Caleb. Okay. So Aria is talking to Caleb and Scotty and Zaina walk past and he's holding her hand. And this upsets her because obviously this experience is designed to elicit these emotions from people. And she is watching someone she loves and who has put a contingency on their relationship for her to be ready, now interested in someone else. And she cries and is comforted by Caleb before walking up to Scotty and Zaina and saying, can I separate you guys? And I don't blame Aria at all because, like I said, this experience is designed to do that. And I perceive her situation much differently than I perceive Dave's situation. Yes, they were both issued the ultimatum, but if couples are supposed to set boundaries with each other before this experience, some couples decide that they're going to be completely open. Other couples are using this as an experience to truly try to have someone teach them something that they possibly couldn't learn from one another. So if that's a boundary and it's just hurtful, it's just hurtful. This is someone who wanted to marry you and all of a sudden is with someone else. So I don't blame her. I don't blame her. Maybe I'm favoring the women, but I don't blame her at all. And that's how the episode ends. Can I separate you? Close. Came to a close. As stated, Dave and Vanessa are least likely to stay together. We don't know very much about Micah and Chanel. We don't know that much about Caleb and Mariah. We don't necessarily understand what Caleb's reasoning is, other than he said that Mariah is younger than him, as to why he's not ready to get married. Aria's reasons make sense. Sandy's reasons make sense. I don't know that we know what JR's reasoning is as far as things with Zaina, especially because he calls her his wife. But this is going to be a really good season. I'm really intrigued. Dave, Dave, Dave. Delusional. I had a song for you on my TikTok. Go on my TikTok and follow me. There's the plug. Everybody, have a great evening. As I watch the show, I'll be hopping back on. Put in the comments which couple you think is least likely to make it through this experience and which couple is most likely. And only comment this if you're on episode 1 and trying to give your first impressions as we are. I'll be back. Everybody, have a great evening. Thank you for listening to another episode of Positively Uncensored. Bye.